Hello, hi, welcome once again to M5's English language learning program, Let's Speak English. I'm Gav Duncan and I'm here on your TV to help you learn English. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Yes? Good. And are you ready for today's lesson? Yes? Good. Okay, well let's learn English together. And a big hello to all of you. Welcome people, welcome. Welcome to this, the lesson before the last lesson of the week. Yes people, it's a Thursday, and that means that today's lesson is the penultimate lesson of the week. It's the one before the last one. Tomorrow's lesson is the last of the Mohicans for this week, and today is the second last of the Mohicans for this week. It's the one before the last one, and of course, it's Thursday, isn't it? Yes, of course it is. You lot knew that already, but even if you'd forgotten, I've already mentioned the fact that it's Thursday a couple of times. So even if you were completely unaware of which day of the week it is, if your ears are working properly, then you should now know what day of the week it is. You should be up to speed. You should know as much as the rest of us. All right, so Thursday. So are you all ready? I thought we'd better have a bit of a vocab lesson today, and probably tomorrow. Last week, after we saw Enid, we didn't run through the vocab like we normally do, so now's a good time to rectify that. So, let's get stuck in to some more vocab, things that we heard when we were listening to Enid. Well, one word we heard was the word mysterious. Now, all that this word means, this adjective, is that something is very difficult to understand. It's impossible to understand. Think about the noun, a mystery. A mystery is something that we can't understand easily, or maybe not at all. Think about the pyramids in Egypt, for example. We're not sure how they were built. It's a mystery. Think about Amelia Earhart, the famous woman pilot who disappeared in 1937. That was a mystery for many, many years, until recently, when someone said that they thought they'd identified some bones as hers. But I still don't know if this mystery has been closed or not. Think about that plane, the Malaysian plane, which went missing in 2014. Nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows what happened to it. People looked all over the world trying to find it, but we still don't know where it went or what happened to it. It's a mystery. We can't understand what happened. And from the noun mystery, we get the adjective mysterious, which we use to talk about something which is hard or impossible to understand. When I said to Enid that she was being mysterious, I was communicating that her answers were vague. Her answers didn't provide very much information. If you ask someone where they've been and they reply, oh, here and there, then they're being mysterious. Okay, enough of mysteries. What else did we hear? Well, Enid mentioned that the young man, the young assistant in the bakery, she mentioned that he had a breakdown. Now, this is a common word which comes from the verb to break. If I break something, then for example, I separate it into pieces with force. Like if I decide to break this pencil, for example. So, we know that if we throw a glass out of the window, it will break into millions of pieces. We know that if someone tries to use my body as a trampoline, my ribs will break. Okay, now what about a breakdown? Well, a breakdown is a noun which refers to a mechanical failure, a relationship failure, or a mental health failure. So we can take this noun and work back to the verb and say that my car broke down. And everyone knows what I mean. I'm telling you that my car stopped working. Something mechanical didn't do what it was designed to do, and as a result, the car stopped working. Or I couldn't start it, or it wouldn't move. Something like that. But as we now know, I can also say that the talks between the company management and the union representatives broke down yesterday when the two parties couldn't agree on what colour to paint the factory. And you all understand that now, these two groups, the managers of the factory and the union representatives, the workers' representatives, they're no longer speaking to each other. And then we come to the third idea, the one that Enid was referring to. When your car breaks down, you call someone, a garage perhaps, a mechanic, to ask them to come and fix your car. When you have a mental breakdown, then you don't call a mechanic, you call a psychologist or a psychiatrist. If someone has a mental breakdown, then their brain can't deal with things anymore. Perhaps they've had a lot of stress recently and, well, their brain can't take the pressure anymore, so their brains stopped working. I always think about this in terms of electricity. Think about electricity for a moment. Think about the point where the electricity supply enters your house or flat. Think about that box you find on the wall, the one that looks something like this. Now that's a fuse box, and inside the fuse box there are electrical fuses. Okay, so now we have to think about what a fuse is. Well, to start with, there are two types of fuse: electrical fuses and fuses connected to bombs and fireworks. Okay. Let's start with the idea of a fuse connected to a bomb or a firework. When we're talking about this type of fuse, we're talking about the thin piece of string or paper that we set fire to.
Stand back! Right, everybody! Fall back!
So that's one type of fuse, the thing that makes it possible to set off a bomb without having to stand next to it, which, let's face it, would be pretty dangerous. Okay, so that's one type of fuse. Now back to the more normal version, the electrical fuse. Now when we're talking about an electrical fuse, we're talking about a very thin piece of wire. And the job of this wire is to protect your electrical system or electrical equipment. When you get your electricity, it's not a constant supply. Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. And sometimes there's a spike of electricity. And electrical spikes are dangerous. Here, on this graph, you can see what an electrical spike looks like. And now, let's see how dangerous an electrical spike can be. So, imagine that you're a television set. You spend your days receiving electricity so that you can show moving pictures with sound on your screen. And you can handle electricity most of the time, but then sometimes the electricity company sends you too much electricity and then you feel like this. Right. Imagine how your TV feels when it gets too much electricity. Those spikes are dangerous. Okay, now the job of the fuse is to protect the TV. The job of the fuse is to break, to blow, when too much electricity tries to pass into the TV or whatever. The fuse blows, the fuse breaks, and the supply of electricity can't damage the TV or whichever piece of equipment we're talking about. If there's no fuse, then this happens. The fuse is in your fuse box, and the fuse is at the back of all the electrical things that you own. Your TV, your fridge, your microwave, all of those pieces of equipment are designed with fuses at the back where the electricity connects to them. If, for some reason, too much electricity comes into the piece of equipment, then the fuse blows, and you only have to replace a small fuse, not a big telly, so that saves you a lot of money. Okay. So how do we get from a fuse to someone having a mental breakdown? Well, I'm glad you asked me that. Let me explain. We all have limits. We all have thresholds. Think about your muscles. There is a limit to how much weight you can lift. 3 rhinos is fine, but 4 rhinos, out of the question. Think about your car. There's a limit to how fast it can travel. The engine isn't limitless. Think about the speed limit. The state decides how fast you're allowed to travel, and if you break the speed limit, if you travel faster than the speed limit, you'll get a fine. Now, think about your body. What happens if you try to do too much? What happens if you try to do too much when it's too hot and when you haven't drunk enough water? Exactly. Try to do physical work when you're dehydrated and your body reaches its limits, and then what happens? Exactly. Just as we know that the fuse protects the electrical equipment in our homes, the body protects itself. So, if because of the heat and the lack of water in your body, there isn't enough oxygen circulating around your cardiopulmonary system and into your brain, what does your body do? Yes, in order to protect your brain and other vital organs from long-term damage, your body decides that it's time to faint.
Well, what would you like to drink then?
What?
To drink?
I didn't catch the name.
Oh, you didn't catch it? What a rotten bit of luck. Well, fine, thank you.
No, we still don't know the name.
Oh, Faulty, Basil
Yes,
Faulty.
no, there.
Oh, there. I'm so sorry. I thought you meant the horse. It's quite warm, isn't it? I can could do with a drink too. So another sherry?
Well, aren't you going to introduce us?
Didn't I?
No.
Oh, sorry. This is Mr. and Mrs. Ferguson.
What?
Mr. and Mrs. Sorry, I fainted. Oh, I feel better for that. I'll just get you your tomato juices.
Okay, so what about your brain? Let's think about the brain for a moment. I know, when you faint, then that's something which is connected to your brain, obviously. But this is a slightly different idea. That idea was physical. The idea that not enough oxygen and blood, or oxygen in blood, was circulating around your body, around your lungs, heart and brain. This idea is mental. This idea is connected to the way your mind works. This isn't so much of a physical idea. This is the idea of how your mind works. This is psychology. How much pressure can your mind take? What happens if you try to think too much? What happens if you try to do too much work in a stressful situation? What happens if you try to do more than your brain can handle? Yes, you'll have a nervous breakdown, won't you? You'll have a mental breakdown. Essentially, the fuse will blow in your brain and your brain will stop working properly. And that means that inside your head, something like this happens. And that's what Enid was talking about when she mentioned someone having a mental breakdown. We understand that cars and things like that, mechanical things, they can break down, they can stop working properly. And if we overload our bodies, the same thing can happen. Push your body past its limits and it'll break down. And as we now know, the same is also true, not only for physical things, but for mental things. Try to make your brain handle more than it can cope with and the fuse blows and you have a mental breakdown. Think about the combat veteran from Vietnam War in Paul Hardcastle's song, 19. They experienced very traumatic events in Vietnam, and for some of them, their brains couldn't cope. The fuse blew and they had nervous breakdowns. They went off their rockers. They went mad. So, when Enid was talking about, well, when she was telling us about Rupert, what was it? His cousin, wasn't it? Anyway, that's not important now. The young man in the bakery. You know the one I mean. When he saw Enid, and more importantly, when he spotted that Keith was with her, it suddenly didn't become important that Keith was on a lead. The fear of Keith from hearing what Rupert had told people of the attack. That fear took hold of the young man's mind, and he couldn't think about anything else. The only thing he could concentrate on was Keith. Everything else was blocked out. All he could focus on was Keith. Keith, mad dog pheasant. So his mind broke down. His mind, his brain stopped working properly. He started to have a mental breakdown. Because he was so scared of Keith, he panicked and couldn't think about anything else. Now, hopefully, he's gotten over the shock of seeing his cousin's attacker. Hopefully this mental breakdown won't be permanent. But we'd better keep an eye on this young man, don't you think? Well, that's as maybe, because yes, that time has arrived once again. It's time for us to part! You and I, our paths are going to separate. My path will lead me home. Home to where there's a coffee with my name on it, waiting for me. And your path? Well, I don't know. It's a mystery to me. Only you know. Your path may lead to the kitchen, to the sink full of dirty dishes, or to the dishwasher, which may be full or may need filling. Anyway, whatever you have to do, do it with two smiles, one in your heart and one in your face, and turn the music on. It makes things better, unless it's really bad music. If it's really bad music, turn it off. I'll see you all tomorrow, and you all know what day tomorrow is going to be, don't you? Yes, that's right. It's damn well not going to be Tuesday. See you tomorrow, people. See you later. www.mediaclick.hu. Bye!